The next jobs are about draining out the fluids. As with most water-cooled bikes, there is a drain plug actually on the water pump. On this particular bike, you have to remove the outer cover to get to the water pump and remove the drain plug. So that's that done. Very little fluid came out of it actually, there was very little left in there, but not a problem. Then I'll have to disconnect the hoses. Before I do that, I've then got to drain the oil. So that's next on the list. The first fluid to come out of the drain was actually water, clear water, which is a little bit concerning. I don't think it's coolant, so I don't suspect a cylinder head problem. And as we're changing the engine over anyway, it shouldn't really make that much difference. To get the engine out, I'm going to have to remove the exhaust. To do that, I'm going to have to remove the radiator. All this piping has got to come away as well. I've also got to remove all the inlet, the injection system. To get the injection system removed, there's more piping, radiator, coolant pipes to come out, and I've also got to take the coils off, which are in behind here, to give it space. So we'll start by taking the radiator off. It's taken me a disgustingly long amount of time to try and figure out how to disconnect this connector to the electric fan, the cooler. And I kept looking at this little tab up here, thinking that that would release it, and pressed and prodded about with it, and nothing happened. It took me a long while to figure out. I even tried prodding at these little clips here and there, another one on that side, to see if that would help, but I couldn't get them to move. It took me a long time to figure out that right in this little notch here there's a little tab that needs to be pulled up towards you. I don't think I can do it one-handed. Oh, I can't do it one-handed. I need two hands to do this, so I'll reset the camera and you can have a look. Now, at the bottom of this, there's a little tab on there which you pull up, and it's that hook that's holding it in place. So you've got an eye there and a hook here, and it took me so long to figure it out, but as soon as you know, it is so easy to come apart. So that then goes over there. And at long last, the radiator fan is free. Next thing to do is to remove the coils. Now the coils at the moment aren't numbered, so I'm a bit worried about whether I plug them in wrong when I get them back in. Well, that's going to be a difficult one in the middle there. I'm going to have to remove this pipe out of the way. Ow! There we are. I've got to get that plug off. Come on. Oh, you come. That's it. Now obviously for the coils there's going to be an electrical connector for them as well, but you can see the clearance between that cover and the coils. Now this whole engine needs to be lifted up, I would say at least 1.5 inches, about 30-40 millimeters, to allow it to clear the frame at the bottom to lift the engine out of the frame. So I think moving these coils is a necessity. I'll take the suppressor caps out from the other side, and then we'll have a look from above and have a look at how we find the electrical connector and how we disconnect the coil pack. Just as a slight footnote, I think I'd like to add, it is interesting to note that this coil pack is very much like the old traditional coils that I'm used to. Modern cars have coil-over plugs, and then each plug has an individual coil, whereas this still has 2 coils, one for 2 cylinders and the other for the other 2 cylinders. That's just a little aside. Right, let's get on with removing them. I don't know if you can see it from there, but in behind here there's this bolt which bolts into the top of the coil pack, and I think this might be the connector for the coils. Unfortunately, with me in the way there, with me digging about in there, I can't get the camera in there as well. So I'm going to crack on with this and I'll let you see what it comes out like. If there's any difficulties, obviously I'll show you. Turns out that this is not the connector for the coils, but the connector is a bit further down here. These cables go off to the coils. This goes obviously into the main wiring harness. So if I could disconnect it here, undo this bolt in here, which you see has got a lot of earth straps onto it. And once I undo that bolt, it releases a bracket that holds the 2 coils in place. Right, having now released the 12mm bolt, again I don't know if you can see it in there, that bolt is now loose, the coils are now loose. The difficulty now is trying to get it out. I need to make sure that it doesn't get tied into anything, which it does seem to want to. At the moment I am trying to, yes, I am trying to draw it backwards to see if I can get it to come out to the rear. Right, we're caught against something. I can't move it any further. I think what I might have to do is disconnect one of these coils from the mounting bracket and try and get it out that way. In case I didn't mention it, that bolt was a 12mm. These are 10s. Doesn't take much to check that. That's that out, thank heavens. Ah, but we've still got a connection there. Oh, because it's still connected to the other coil, that's why. Right, that's the coil packs out. Put the nuts back on there for now. I've got to find the bolt and the nut that fell off there. Now with a lot more space in there to manoeuvre, there's this little device at the front. That is loose mounted, there's nothing holding that at all. The only thing connecting it is here. If I disconnect this, I should be able to then feed that out of the way. That disconnected in exactly the same way as the fan. So that's out. Disconnect the hose from the airbox, if I can. It's not easy. Oh, okay, that's not going to be so easy. Maybe if I disconnect it from this device. So that's not so easy either. Having now pulled it out from this side, obviously that disconnected, that's the hose from the far side, that's the hose from this side, and this is the hose that goes to the air filter. I've released that clip from it, but I'm having difficulty removing the pipe from the air filter housing. There we go, free. Got to, oh, bit of a tug, and it's out. With that out, we now have this shielding, which is only rubber shielding. Seems to be held on, I think, with just a screw there. A screw in the tensor at the top here. Perhaps if I lean round, in the centre at the top there, and I presume another one on the far side. Yes, you can see it there. Okay, so to take those three screws out, this rubber housing should come free. There's a zip tie here holding that flap on. I assume there's one on the other side doing the same. Yes, there is. So I'm going to have to release these zip ties to get them off. Try and get one that's the right size. Oh, that feels rubber. I don't think that's not a bolt. That's not a bolt. No, that's just a cap. That's just a little button in the metalwork with a cap on it, so that just pulls free, so that's not a problem. Gloves are getting torn to shreds as always. There we go. It's that little tab there to lift, and it unhooks the zip tie, which means that they are completely reusable. Yeah, it's badly out of focus on this thing, unfortunately. One little horrible screw, suitably unscrewed. It seems to be pressed into little slots in the cylinder, and I don't want to break that. fabulous trick for getting this out. Small ring spanner. In this case I'm using a 7mm. Slide it up over the end, force it on to the wide gap which will narrow it, and then pull it through. Now force it on, grab the tab at the bottom and pull so that you can force the ring spanner up as high as possible, so it should just be touching the underside of the metal, and then with luck and then pull this up through, and it works. And that's the rubber out. Silencer comes off easy enough. There's only this clamp to undo, and there's a mounting point here to undo, and then the silencer will lift free. That will then only leave the header pipes to remove, and I believe they're only clamped at the cylinder head. I don't believe there's any mounting point at the middle here. Having said that, I'm looking at it now. Yes, there is. There's a bolt here holding it. Right, the exhaust is off. Fairly standard and straightforward operation. It's studs in the head with cap nuts on them, which do help prevent corrosion a little bit, but as you can see there is a bit of corrosion on some of these studs. In fact, so much so that one of the studs has actually rusted itself to the nuts, so the whole entire stud has come out, so I'll have to separate them somehow. I'm kind of running away here without recording. I just get into it and great. Right, I've removed the clutch actuator. This is a sealed unit, as I was hoping it would be. There's only 3 8mm hex head bolts hold it in place. It does take a bit of levering to get out. It's quite a tight fit, but once it's out, like I say, it's self-contained and it can sit out of the way. The next thing I've done is feed this pipe through from the other side. It was held by one clamp at the back of the cylinders. This goes into the water pump here. There's a small hose at the bottom here. I'm not sure where that goes to, but I'll disconnect that. There's also 2 hoses at the front which need to be disconnected. The water pump is held by 10mm hex bolts. I can only see 2 at the moment, 3. Yeah, there does only appear to be 3. I've removed the clutch. I've removed the sprocket casing cover. I've removed the water pump facing. I've also disconnected the water pump itself, which is only held by 2 bolts. Once you remove the bolts from the cover, there's actually only 1 bolt at the bottom here that holds the pump in place. The pump has a spline which connects to the engine gearbox there, and you can see that there's oil, hopefully you can see, there's oil coming out of that hole. Well, unfortunately I've drained the oil from the engine already, but that suggests that before you can take this water pump off, you do have to drain the oil out of it, otherwise you'll end up with a severe mess. Having done that, I then removed the electric starter motor out of the way. Electric starter motor, which of course is just the positive connection to the outside of it on a 10mm bolt with a rubber boot over it, and then the 2 10mm headed bolts at the back of the starter motor. Very simple to come out. Don't we just love modern manufacturing? To take out the injectors, first you have to remove the rear cowling. Then you have to remove the rear half of the fender or mudguard. Then you have to remove the inner half of the mudguard. Then you have to remove the rear housing for the air filter. Then you have enough space to remove the front half of the air filter or plenum chamber, and then you can remove the injectors. A lot of this bike is coming apart. I can see why nobody wanted to do this.